There is a £100 million footballer who apparently loves Manchester United. His words, and right now every major club in England wants to sign him. Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, and yes, us. But here's the thing, there's a reason this particular transfer saga feels different to most. It's not just about the money, it's not just about who bids first. There are personal connections involved here that could completely change how this plays out, and I genuinely think United might have more of an edge than people are realising. We've also got United's first signing of the Carrick era confirmed, done, sealed, documents signed, and already, the club is moving towards the next one, and then the one after that. Oh, and Anthony Martial is a free agent. Again, which honestly deserves its own conversation because there's so much more to say about that than just the headline. I'm Bella. Welcome to Bella Mufc Analysis, and if United's transfer window is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night in the best and worst possible way, hit subscribe because we're going to be deep in this all summer. Right, let's start with the biggest story, Morgan Rogers, because I keep seeing this framed as a simple transfer battle. Arsenal want him, United want him, who offers more money wins. And I think that completely misses what's actually happening here. Let's start with the player. Rodgers just had another genuinely brilliant season for Aston Villa. 14 goals, 12 assists. In all competitions, for a player who is 23 years old, he helped Villa win the Europa League. He's an England international. He's creative, he's direct, he's unpredictable. Roy Keane compared him to Gascoigne, which, when Keane says something like that about a young player, you pay attention. So yes, everyone wants him. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is who Manchester United have in their corner on this one. Jason Wilcox, United's director of football. He knows Rodgers personally. They were together at Manchester City during Rodgers' development years. That's not nothing. When you're trying to convince a young player to make the biggest decision of his career, having someone he trusts in the building genuinely matters. And then there's Carrick. Michael Carrick managed Morgan Rogers at Middlesbrough. He knows his game, he knows his character, he's seen him develop up close. So you've got the director of football with a personal connection and the manager with a professional history. Both of them able to pick up the phone and have a real conversation with this player. Not a formal transfer pitch, not a sales presentation, an actual conversation between people who know each other. Arsenal don't have that, and this is where the Standard Sport headline makes more sense when you sit with it. Rodgers scored both goals in Villa's 2-1 win over United back in December. And his post-match comments, he talked about United being no bigger team, talked about the size of the fixture, spoke about them with genuine respect. Now, people are saying that's bad news for Arsenal, and I think they're right, because you don't talk about clubs like that unless they live in your head a little bit. That doesn't mean Rodgers is going to United. I want to be clear about that. Multiple sources say he's open to Arsenal and that Arteta is personally driving this. And Arteta's pull right now is enormous. Premier League champions, passionate about attacking football, clearly building something special at the Emirates. That is a very real alternative. But here's my actual question, and I think it's the right question to be asking. What does Morgan Rogers want his career to look like? Because if you're 23 with a ceiling that we genuinely don't know the top of yet, do you go to Arsenal, where the project is established, where you know your role, where Arteta has a very clear system? Or do you go to Old Trafford, where something new is genuinely being built, where a manager who already believes in you specifically is in charge, and where the long-term opportunity might be even bigger? There's a version of this where Rodgers looks at United's midfield situation and sees himself as a potential cornerstone. Bruno Fernandes turns 32 in September. United already see Rodgers as a long-term heir in that creative role. That's not just a transfer, that's a succession plan. That's being told, we see you as the future of this club. I don't know if that matters to him, but it would matter to me. And the other thing worth saying, Villa want over 100 million for this player. That is a significant number. But given who Rodgers is, given what he's shown, given his age and his ceiling, I think it's actually fair, honestly. The Grealish comparison in terms of fee might sting, but if you're watching what Rodgers does week in, week out, the number makes sense. The question for United is whether Ineos will actually commit to that figure when there are alternatives out there. Because Chelsea are watching, Manchester City are watching. And you can imagine a situation where the bidding war escalates in a direction that makes everyone uncomfortable. What do I think? I think United genuinely have an edge here that the numbers alone don't reflect. And I think the next few weeks are going to tell us a lot about how serious Michael Carrick is about reshaping this attack. Now, let's talk about what is already confirmed, because while everyone's debating Rodgers, Carrick has already gotten his first deal across the line. Ederson from Atalanta, done. Fabrizio Romano called it 100% confirmed. All documents completed. €45 million package, €40.5 million plus add-ons. 5-year contract, 4+1. He is a Manchester United player. And I want to spend a moment on what this signing actually means, because I've seen some lukewarm reactions online. People saying it's not a marquee name, people saying they wanted someone bigger. And I just completely disagree with that take. Ederson is 26 years old. He played 49 games for Atalanta last season. He contributed 5 goals and 2 assists. He can play in defensive midfield, centrally, or further forward. He's the kind of player who makes a team function. The engine, the press recovery machine, the player who wins the ball back and immediately does something intelligent with it. Atalanta football is not easy football. Gasperini's system demands relentless work, tactical intelligence, and the ability to perform in a high-pressure environment. Ederson has been doing that for years. He's not a project, he's ready. And here's the context that matters most. Casemiro is leaving. The midfield needed a complete overhaul. Ederson is the first piece. But what's already being reported, what's already circulating, is that United are not stopping there. The next name being discussed is Sandro Tonali. Now this one is massive. Reports are saying United are confident of getting a deal done. They're described as ahead of Arsenal and Manchester City in the race, with those clubs currently focused on other targets. United are said to be ready to offer somewhere in the range of £70 to £80 million. And the tactical picture here is fascinating. Because Ederson and Tonali in the same midfield is not an accident. These are two completely different types of player. Ederson is mobile, creative, can drive forward, can play through lines. Tonali is different. Tonali is a warrior. He wins the ball back. He protects the defense. He covers ground. He leads. Paul Scholes said earlier this season that he thinks Tonali is better than Declan Rice. That is not a small statement. Put those two alongside Kobbie Mainoo, who's already extended his contract at Old Trafford, and you're looking at a midfield trio that has real identity, energy, intelligence, physicality, and creativity. That's not a midfield being patched together. That's a midfield being designed. The Casemiro problem at United was never just about Casemiro getting older. It was about United building a team around a type of midfielder that the modern game was moving away from. The slow, positional, purely defensive anchor. Tonali is not that. Tonali presses. Tonali transitions. Tonali adds something going forward too. He's a modern version of what that role needs to be. And if you add Morgan Rogers or someone of that caliber further forward, you start to see what Carrick is actually building. A midfield that works, an attack that creates, a team that looks coherent. Newcastle are going to make this difficult. They have Tonali under contract. They don't want to lose him. But United are apparently ahead in this race. And if Ineos can get it done somewhere around that 70 to 80 million range, which for a player of Tonali's quality and age feels like a genuine steal, then this becomes one of the most exciting transfer windows United have had in a very long time. And then there's Lewis Hall. Newcastle's Lewis Hall, 21 years old, reportedly wants to join Manchester United. Talks are said to be due to start in the coming days. Fee in the region of £50 million. And this is interesting on multiple levels because obviously there's the tactical need. United need a left back. That is not a secret. It's been a problem for a while, but Hall is not just a left back in the traditional sense. Reports describe him as versatile. He can play as a midfielder too, which in the modern game, that kind of positional flexibility is incredibly valuable to a manager who wants to build something with multiple shapes. And think about the Newcastle angle for a second. United would potentially be taking Tonali and Hall from the same club in the same window. That is a statement. That would also genuinely be a significant blow to Newcastle's rebuild. They've already lost Anthony Gordon to Barcelona this summer. Losing Tonali and Hall on top of that would be a painful summer for Eddie Howe, but that's their problem. United need players. These players want to come, and the window is moving quickly. There's also Mateus Fernandes being mentioned as potentially United's second signing after Ederson. The business happening here is not small. Carrick came in, steadied the ship, got the club into the Champions League, and is now actively building the squad he wants. It feels purposeful. It feels joined up. It feels like someone actually has a plan, right? I want to shift gears now, because not everything in football is about signings and ambition and exciting new chapters. Sometimes it's about looking at a career and asking, what happened? Anthony Martial and Rayados have mutually agreed to terminate his contract. Fabrizio Romano broke it on June the 6th. The 30-year-old joined the Mexican club in September last year from AEK Athens on a contract until 2027. He made 20 appearances in all competitions, 1 goal, 3 assists. Rayados finished 13th in the Clausura and missed the playoffs entirely. He was one of many things that just didn't work, and now he's a free agent. Again. The story of Anthony Martial is one that I find genuinely difficult to process as a football fan, not because of bitterness, not even really because of what he didn't do at United, but because of what he clearly was, what he clearly had. When he arrived at Old Trafford in 2015 from Monaco as the most expensive teenager in football history at the time, the things he could do with a football were extraordinary. That first goal against Liverpool, remember that? He received the ball on the left, drifted inside, shuffled past two defenders, and rolled it into the bottom corner. The Old Trafford crowd gave him a standing ovation on his debut, his first game, a standing ovation, and the ability never left him. You could see it in flashes throughout his time at United. When he was fit and motivated and in form, he was genuinely special. The problem was, and I think we can say this honestly now, was that those moments never added up to a consistent story. The injuries were real, the motivation questions were real, the relationship with managers was complicated, there were seasons where it felt like the club was carrying him. And then there were seasons where you'd see a run of games and think, this is it, this is him, he's finally putting it together, and then it would fall apart again. He left United in 2023, went to Sevilla, that didn't work, then AEK Athens, then Monterrey, and now at 30 years old, he's a free agent 1 week before the World Cup, a tournament he won't be at. Reports are mentioning disciplinary issues at Rayados, limited playing time, tensions within the club, the same themes that followed him for years. I'm not going to be harsh about this. Because I think the story of Anthony Martial is ultimately a sad one, not a frustrating one, not an angering one, a sad one. Because somewhere underneath all the inconsistency and injury and wasted time, there was a genuinely special footballer. Roy Keane compared Morgan Rogers to Gascoigne. There was a time, and genuinely, when people were talking about Martial in those kinds of terms. What comes next for him? I honestly don't know. He needs a club willing to give him time, a low-pressure environment, and a clear role. But his wages throughout his career have been enormous. That's going to make finding a home difficult. He's not a player clubs will pay big money for on faith anymore. I hope he finds something. I genuinely do. But there's a version of this story where Anthony Martial never plays in a significant competition again. And that would be a genuinely strange end for a player who, at 20 years old, looked like he could be one of the best in the world. Now let me bring it back to United and the goalkeeper situation. Because it's less glamorous, but it actually matters quite a bit. Sam Johnstone, Wolves, United are interested. Johnstone is 33. He's a United Academy graduate. He left Old Trafford permanently back in 2018. He joined Wolves from Crystal Palace last year for £10 million, made 12 league appearances, and with Wolves now relegated to the Championship, he's available. The plan is straightforward. Senna Lamens is the number one. That's not in dispute. Tom Heaton has just had a 1-year extension signed as the third choice. Altay Bayındır has serious interest from Turkey. Andre Onana has come back from his Trabzonspor loan but has no future at the club. Everyone at Carrington wants him gone. So there's a clear gap at number 2. And Johnstone fits it. He's experienced. He knows the Premier League. He knows the academy culture at United. He wouldn't come in with expectations of starting. He'd come in knowing his role. And given that United are back in the Champions League, squad depth in goal actually matters. Is it the most exciting piece of transfer business? No. But good squads are built on exactly this kind of logic. You don't just invest in your starters. You build depth at every level. And getting a competent, experienced Premier League goalkeeper on a reasonable fee, given his contract situation at Wolves, is smart business. It won't get the headlines. But 3 months into the season, when Lamens picks up a knock and United have a Champions League game 3 days later, you'll remember why it mattered. So let me try and bring all of this together because there's quite a lot happening simultaneously, and I think it's worth stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. Carrick came in mid-season. He inherited a squad that was underperforming badly under Amorim. He got them to third, Champions League football secured, not a small achievement, and now the summer starts. And what are we actually seeing? Ederson, done. A box-to-box Brazilian midfielder at 26 with enormous experience and intelligence, first piece of the midfield rebuild. Tonali, reportedly close. A world-class defensive midfielder with Premier League experience, Champions League experience, and the kind of leadership profile that United's midfield has been missing for years. Lewis Hall, talk starting. Young, versatile, English, left-back and midfielder, the kind of player who grows with the club. Morgan Rogers, being pursued personally by the manager and director of football. A 23-year-old who can be the creative heart of this team for the next decade. and goalkeeper depth quietly being addressed in the background. That is not a random collection of signings. That is a plan, a coherent plan. Midfield power, midfield intelligence, left side coverage, and creative attack. Now, do I think it all happens realistically? I think Ederson is done. I think Tonali is close, but Newcastle will fight hard. I think Lewis Hall depends on how the Tonali situation plays out. United won't want to strip Newcastle entirely in the same window, though football has no sentimentality. And Rodgers will come down to whether United blink on the 100 million plus fee and whether those personal connections actually translate into a choice. But even if United land Ederson, Tonali and Hall, that's a transformative window. That changes what this squad looks like. That changes what this team can do. And the thing that gives me genuine optimism, more than the names, more than the fees, is that for the first time in a while, it feels like there's a vision. It feels like decisions are being made with a plan behind them. Not just reacting to the market, not just chasing agents' clients, actually identifying the right profiles and pursuing them. Whether Ineos execute that vision in the window, that's the question. Because we've seen United identify the right targets before and still somehow end up signing the wrong players. The recruitment process has to hold together all the way to the end. But right now it feels good. It feels like summer at Old Trafford should feel, full of possibility, full of anticipation, full of the sense that something is actually being built here. Morgan Rodgers' words about United being no bigger team are floating around the internet right now for a reason. Whether he ends up in red or not, that quote tells you something about how players in this league see this club. The reverence is still there. The draw is still there. Now, Carrick and Ineos have to turn that draw into actual signings and then into actual results. That's the challenge. That's always been the challenge. But this particular summer, I feel like we might actually be watching it happen properly for once. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who do you want United to prioritise, Rodgers, Tonali or Hall? And is there any part of you that feels for Marshall, or has that ship sailed completely? Drop it below. I read every single one.